All right, we're back with another podcast. If you're not watching this one, you're going to wish that you were, because today we have the most beautiful man in Boise on the podcast, Brad Blair. We don't often have repeat customers here on the Mission 43 podcast, but we decided to do so for a very specific reason, and it's about to get real. We are going to talk about recovery, and in that, all the nonlinear aspects of it. Specifically our struggles, both Brad and I's personal struggles with substance abuse, with TBI and PTSD. Not always the most comfortable subject to dive into, but here we go. Welcome to the Mission 43 podcast, a podcast dedicated to discussing the struggles and triumphs of transitioning to life after the military. I'm Dan Nelson. I'm a former Army Special Forces officer who's personally experienced the challenges of transitioning to civilian life. In every episode, we'll be sharing tips, strategies, and real-life stories of veterans and their families who've chosen Idaho for their life after the military. So join us, and let's start the conversation. Brad, thanks for being here again for part 2 of the podcast. We very rarely do this, have on repeat guests. Now, last time you were here, you were the fairly new Engagement Director, Mission 43, ORP Director. ORP is Operation Resilient Path. Yeah. And really, we're here because at the time we did the podcast, we were both just lying through our teeth. Not exactly. Not completely, but I think we left some details out, and since then a lot has happened for both of us.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be valuable, I hope, for somebody out there that may be in need of help, that may be afraid to reach out, and like I said, just thanks for being willing to share this time.
Absolutely, Dan. Well, I thank you for inviting me back, and it is a unique experience and opportunity to hopefully share with our members and our audience, and I anticipate and hope that this will be an opportunity for other people like us, that you call it lying, shifting perspective, giving enough of information that you're comfortable with so people don't ask the hard questions. Hopefully they're going to open up to that opportunity themselves, and I think that's why we do the work that we do, and hopefully we can, continue the opportunity to serve as an example for our audience and for people that we care about, people that we truly want to see doing their best here in Idaho after the military.
You know, we've been doing this for a while, and not that we're podcast experts by any means, but I don't really get nervous doing these, and this is kind of the first time I've actually felt nervous doing something like this, because I've made a real deliberate effort, especially over the past 6.5 years since I got hurt the last time. And like you said, being an expert at being vague, and in the effort of being okay. And it's kind of weird because, you also, you've been out for 12 years now?
Yeah.
You left Ranger Regiment, left the Army, came back here, and for over 12 years you've been successful in this life. And I imagine there's other people out there that are similar to us in the sense that they don't want to be an addict. They don't want to be an alcoholic. They don't want to be a PTSD sufferer or, a brain injured sloth bag. I don't want to be disabled.
Broken. Whatever word you use. Yeah, I think that was a unique experience, or damaged. I think you and I have both been doing enough work here recently to understand that some of those words that change and allow us to shift our perspective to actually do the hard work, and a different type of hard work that we're used to doing, they're hard to hear. I guess it's a portrayal of who we don't want to be seen as. And it hopefully, I anticipate and I hope that during this time you and I can break through that, disdain for some of those words, and we throw it around all the time, but destigmatize. Just make it normal to need help. Make it normal to advance through programs on the necessary timeline, but also accept that it's a continuum. We talked about that a little bit last time, that it's a process. Everybody tracks a different rate, different pace, and all we can do is continue. I think that's the biggest picture, is we got to keep doing the work. We got to admit when we're wrong and ask for help, but also just commit to doing that work.
And that's the thing, though, is like we're here talking about this not just to air the dirty laundry and say like, hey, you're not alone. It's that like people are not alone in these situations, but we have resources to help.
Yeah.
And I'm not a clinician. You're not a clinician. Mission 43 is not full of clinicians, nor is the field house itself. But now with your new position at the field house, still running Operation Resilient Path and being the liaison to Summit Hyperbarics and Wellness, as well as all of our other partners, Warriors Heart, Headstrong, Marks Institute for Brain Health, all these different groups that are doing really valuable and meaningful work in this space that you and obviously the people that back Mission 43, JCAF, like they brought here to Idaho specifically to help military members, first responders, and military family members in some cases.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can't say it enough, but the continued help and support that I've received from Mission 43, those programs that you're speaking to, they've changed my life. I mean, I cannot anticipate where I would be today without experiencing hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And obviously that's a part of the field house through Summit Hyperbarics Health and Wellness, and Warriors Heart as a national partner on the substance abuse and rehabilitative process that they work with the warrior class, so military and law enforcement. I think that's a huge benefit, and the way that they do their work, and who they allow to participate in those programs. But yeah, all that being said, yeah, I'm forever in debt. I think we can't say it enough. What that debt is, I don't know. I don't know how to repay it. I think you and I both have a shared belief, like our responsibility is to share these opportunities with as many people and the right people that are, they're willing to accept the help.
Well, that's the hard part, right? Is getting people, one, to acknowledge they need help, and then two, getting them willing to accept the help. We know for a fact in doing this since 2019 that we cannot, no matter how influential, no matter what we throw at people, we can't make somebody get help. Mm-hmm. And then there's the case of ourselves, and I'll speak for myself, where like you, I feel like, I don't mind saying the word, like I was saved by, the Albertsons Family Foundation and by Mission 43. When they found me, I was in a horrible place, and through HBOT, I got a second chance, right?
Yeah.
And then I had some success. Like I developed, like I started this job. I moved into the positions that I've moved into throughout my time here. And at the same time, part of the vagueness is, like I was self-medicating really heavily, for going on 6 years now. And that took different forms. First with the opioids, I got over that hump. I thought that was a big deal. And then alcohol, because alcohol is acceptable, right? Yeah. Like, because no one, it became kind of part of my identity, which I'm not proud of, but I was the dude that could drink an enormous amount and still function, still show up to work, still be normal. And that all takes a toll. It takes a toll on the people that care about you. And that led me to getting help eventually. But first, I want to go back to your timeline.
Yeah.
So we met before you worked here. When you were in need of help, you just suffered a brain injury, and we took you up to HBOT. And last time you were here, we talked about that again. But let's pick up kind of where we were then, like when we last sat here and talked, and maybe weren't as honest with ourselves as we should have been.
Yeah, no, that sounds great, Dan. And yeah, to just jump right in there, I don't recall if I mentioned it last time, but my injury was an alcohol-related injury. And similar to a lot of people out there, they utilize alcohol as a way to normalize their life or their surroundings and some of the things that they're going through. And for me, that was the one thing back then that allowed me to normalize, I guess, some of the things that I was feeling, experiencing, doubts, frustrations, struggles with identity, and my current state as a dad, as a husband. And so, understanding that remove alcohol, which I was determined to do at that time, and I did it successfully for a year and a half. I had overcome the addiction. I wasn't an addict because I could control my intake. And later to come to find out, like being able to control your intake but still going back to something that is a negative thing in your life, like raise your hand, like that's addict behavior. And so required the continuation of education for me to understand a lot of the things that I was doing in my life to compensate, whether it was alcohol, whether it was exercise, whether it was learning. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of things that can be utilized to create that dopamine response. I mean, the chemical response that you have with different relationships of different things. And so yeah, I had overcome alcohol for a year and a half. I was healed from my brain injury for a time. I mean, I think I was returned back to close to 80% baseline of my cognitive abilities, which is pretty substantial considering my injury. And the cognitive abnormalities is what caused me to look for help. I remember conversations with you sharing things that were hard after I came onto the team, and like, hey, just you can get help for these things. We've got partners that do this kind of work. HBOT worked to get you to here. Maybe we just need to get you to here, and everything will be better. But also at that time, I had achieved my sobriety and I began drinking again because I was in control. I figured that it was something that I could control. And the reality was I can't. Brad Blair cannot control his alcohol intake. I can not have the drink, but when I do have the drink, that's when I realize and I succumb to that reality that the false identity that Brad needs alcohol to be liked, desired, achieving, all these things that were just misaligned in the reality of who Brad was and the environment that I was operating in. And people around you can see it. My back to my wife who loves me, cares about me deeply. I remember sharing that, like my wife and my family pointed these things out that I needed help in these areas. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I've done a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy type modalities and through clinicians, right, professional. And so I've began to understand like how things are connected, and it's unique because not all trauma is traumatic, and arguably a lot of things that you and I have experienced, some people would say, well, those are traumatic experiences. And to understand how things are connected and how things aren't connected, but we associate them together, is really unique. And that's a long-winded response to, I guess, where I was, but point blank, the reality was alcohol was my problem. And not just alcohol, but I guess the chase or the desire for some kind of false identity or understanding of who I needed to be, versus who I was. And, not to wrap it all up in a single statement, but that's where I still do work. Brad, you're uncomfortable. Why are you uncomfortable? It's okay to be uncomfortable. You don't have to change your state of mind to become comfortable. Sit in this discomfort, understand what's making you uncomfortable, and do work. Do work there. If it's your kids are loud and it's overstimulating, like sit there. Acknowledge the fact that it's hard, and there's people in your life that want to help you through it. But
what if I don't want to sit there when they're being loud? I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
no one does.
Reasonable question. Yeah, it's a very reasonable question. I think it's part of that process, and that's not the only thing that potentially is holding somebody back from recovery. No. But I think that's where I landed, was acknowledging the fact that there's little micro stimuli in my life, or lack thereof, that I needed to refamiliarize with myself with. And dopamine's one of them. Like understanding the dopamine response, or all the chemicals in our brain. Like that was the light bulb moment for me. Is like, no wonder I was a 17-year-old kid, joined the Army, joined the Ranger Regiment, and like it was just go. And so from the moment that I probably started at 1st Ranger Battalion to the time that I ETS'd out of the Army, like it was gas go.
All gas, no brakes.
Yeah. As much as you can put out, the more you can, the more you accelerate yourself or you achieve in your job. And that's obviously measured in different ways, but the more you achieve, the more you'll succeed.
It's an environment of extremes.
Yeah.
And I think most or any of the special operations units that we've been a part of, extremes are valued and rewarded to some extent.
Yeah.
Like, can you work extremely hard? Can you perform extremely well physically, mentally? Can you go long times without sleep, rest, deprived of other, niceties? And then at the same time, can you enjoy life and party hard sometimes when you have the opportunity? And I'm not blaming the Army, the military, me personally.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not blaming them for those issues. I really don't feel that personally. But getting back to where you were at, and thank you for sharing that, but we've kind of evolved, Mission 43 has evolved a lot as an organization over time, but I mean, you and I have evolved a lot as well. And for me, when I started this, I was comfortable, maybe not comfortable, but I was willing to share some of my struggles. Like, hey, I struggled with TBI and PTSD for this, and this is what I did. I utilized HBOT to overcome it. Hey, I'm comfortable and I feel proud of myself in the really vain way of saying, like, yeah, like I see a counselor, and like that's a big deal, or was a big deal for me. And now we've evolved because we've been through more programs, and I'm a 40-year-old that just got out of rehab at this point. You know what I mean? So like, there's things that I was not, and I still am not, I can't say comfortable talking about it, but I think it's important to get out there, and not just for selfish reasons. It helped me to know that you went through Warrior's Heart, like the premier substance abuse facility, inpatient treatment, world class, down in Bandera, Texas, and now they have one in Virginia as well. But we both went to the one in Texas. You about a year before me, and I felt incredibly proud of you. I was really nervous for you, because the idea of stopping my drinking was scary to me. I couldn't picture my life at that point without my go-to medication. But I saw you do it, and I saw you come back and succeed like wildly, and just develop and overcome all kinds of obstacles that you had in your way, alcohol just being one of them.
Yeah.
But do you feel like you're in a place, or have you been in a place, are you going to a place where you feel comfortable sharing about all that stuff?
Oh, I absolutely. And that's, to define success post rehab, I think is a real unique thing, because it's so much more than just sobriety. If you say I came out of rehab and I'm no longer drinking alcohol, arguably yay for me. You're a dry drunk is what they call us, But to acknowledge a lot of the other systematic problems in my own life that needed attention, mainly my marriage, and how to articulate some of my own desires in a meaningful way so that Abigail could understand things that I was wanting. And I mean, not to break down the addiction, but like shame is the number one cause why people stay in addiction. And plain and simple, I was shameful of myself. I was shameful of Brad as an individual who was no longer competing and performing at the top of my potential. And, some people might hear that and be like, wow, Brad, like you run 20 miles a week if you want to, or a single time, like you can stop what you're doing and do X, Y, or Z. And it's like, yeah, but those are all things that were also kind of the addict behavior of I need to perform in order to hide. And so, Warrior's Heart for me, it was almost a year ago, November 1st of last year, coming back from Marcus Institute, doing their 3-day assessment. There was a definitive, yes, please return to our programming. You need this. All the cognitive testing, the amount of thorough testing that they do to, one, educate the individual that's going through their program, but also so that they have a full 360 picture of how they're going to provide you with services. It allowed me to see like none of that was going to get better if I didn't give up alcohol. And I think this is not a like alcohol's bad conversation.
No.
But for me as an individual, the response that I was having in my brain with my brain injury, it was continuing to, I guess, fill a sinking ship with water. It was not doing me any good. So their decision was, Brad, we want you to return, but you have to go to a program. And I was like, I can quit drinking even if you tell me, hey, you can't drink for the rest of your life. Like, I can do that. And they're like, no, you can't. You have to go to a program. And this was an argument, between my wife and I at the time. And, there was a stint there after coming back from Marcus Institute. I did not live with my family. It was, Brad, you're a man of character, but these things that you're doing, you're deciding to deviate from that character that I know you to have and to the person I know you to be. I don't see that in this behavior. And Brad, who was consuming alcohol and at a reasonable rate, I did not accept that as a identifiable critique that my wife would give to me out of love.
Yeah.
And that was, Brad living in shame. It was how dare you say that I'm an alcoholic and I need help, and unless I quit drinking for good, then I can't be around my kids. You feel unsafe. You can't, all your driving privileges are revoked, to the point of like, hey, it's us or alcohol. Mm-hmm. And like you, like I'm an all or nothing kind of guy, right? So if I say no alcohol for the rest of my life, like that's a big decision.
Yeah.
And, I still have moments where I'm like, man, this is one of those moments that it would be really nice to have a drink. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much a strong desire, but it's still like the recognition of like, man, this is what alcohol fixed. Mm-hmm. And so to acknowledge that was present, I'm extremely grateful for how Abigail presented it. And, arguably she could have done some things differently. However, she did everything that she knew to do at that time, and was, even seeking help. And at the time we were, doing couples counseling and stuff. And it was the definitive measure, or the ultimatum that I needed.
But there's some really dark and confusing aspects of addiction that, even with the best intentions, cloud things. And for me, I personally, because we're outside of working together, like, you are a brother to me, and I love you. And I did not help you during that period. And it's talk about shame and guilt and stuff, but like, I really wanted, as a friend, as someone that cares about you, to help you the best. But when at that period you asked me, like, well, do you think I'm an alcoholic? Keep in mind that I'm an actively abusing alcoholic at the time. But when you asked me that, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And I wasn't lying. Yeah. I genuinely thought that, because you could stop drinking. Like, you would stop for a period of time and complete these amazing athletic events. And it was different than me. I don't think people realize, I didn't realize, that addiction comes in lots of different forms. And there's rarely, one particular thing. There's people like me that if I stopped drinking for more than 12 hours, I would start to have physical withdrawal symptoms. Mm-hmm. And it got really bad.
Yeah.
And there's people like you that could stop for a year and a half and compete all these amazing athletic ability, adventures and challenges and all that stuff. But that dependency is still there. Whether it's a straight up chemical, physical dependency or a mental dependency, there's that thing. And I think, you mentioned it before, but some of the people, if anyone is watching, listening, that's thinking like, that has exposure to the 12 steps of AA and other programs, like, the big first one is admitting that you're powerless over alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I have a huge time admitting that I'm powerless over anything, minus Hostess cupcakes.
I'll show you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like, and, to say that I'm out of control or that I'm powerless over something, like, is really challenging for me, and I don't know how that was for you.
Yeah, no, that was Brad's game. You're gonna challenge me with that I'm powerless over something,
Mm-hmm.
then I'll quit for as long as I need to, or like it changes my ability to operate. I will show you that I can operate under the influence, and so some really stupid, scary things that those actions that Abigail took made perfect sense. And now it's like I would drink drunk, or I would drive drunk. And for me, it was one of those things like I can do it. And I'm going to show the world. And it's hard to even say that out loud.
Yeah.
Because now that I play it through, like there's always the what ifs, but forget the what ifs, acknowledge and accept the responsibility of that decision. It's the exact opposite of what I aspire to do, which is to protect and preserve life. There's nothing more important to me, Brad Blair, than to protect and preserve life. And I mean, that is my purpose and my identity. And we didn't necessarily mean or want to have 5 kids, but we have it. And that's the important thing to me is like, okay, these are my children. I need to protect and preserve life the best that I can. However, in my drunken state or in my addict state, like that was the last thing that I was doing. For myself, arguably, the quiet suicide. I mean, I've lost friends that fall asleep drunk and don't wake up.
Mm-hmm.
It's a passive death. It's a slow death. And, those were some of the things that I was struggling with there towards the end, and I think the reality started hitting. There's a couple times where I got really sick, physically ill because of how much alcohol I drank, and it wasn't like party sick, puking.
Yeah.
It was like for a week and a half, 2 weeks, like I was scared if I was going to get better.
Yeah.
That type of things that I think you experience when your liver starts to reject itself, or it's starting to die, and that was scary. That was really scary. I was, 32-year-old, and I'm killing myself. Mm-hmm. Not intentionally, arguably, but it was happening.
I think this is a really complicated subject, and I think one of the things that people have, maybe asking right now that are listening to this is like, well, why do you have alcohol at some Mission 43 events?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it is true. We do. For me, personally, I just say, like, I don't think that alcohol is evil.
Yeah.
I think that I personally developed an addiction to it, and I lost control. I became powerless over a substance, and I needed help to get over it. I still need help to work through that, right? I think it's unique because for me, alcohol is my problem.
Mm-hmm.
So for people that are normies, for people that are regular, and they can choose whether or not they want a beer or want a glass of wine or whatever it is, recreationally, the difference is, I think, that normal drinkers, from my half-ass experience here, they drink to feel something other than normal.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I was drinking to feel normal.
Yeah.
I always felt abnormal. I was drinking to try to get on the same plane as everybody else. It's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, and it's not abnormal. Like, that's a common thought pattern of somebody, myself included. In order to enjoy playing with my kids, I had to consume alcohol. Like, I would drink in between home or work and home because I knew that I had to do something that was hard for me. And alcohol normalized that interaction for me. I have no idea what that was like for my kid. I think I'll continue to understand and unpack. Alcohol is not the enemy. I think it's a unique thing, and it's a dance that I think people probably argue over, like how much is appropriate, what's appropriate, especially in professional interactions and in engagement type events, specifically ones that we host. And I don't think we're going to change. Mission 43 is going to change our policies on how we interact with people, things that we provide people, because it is an individual responsibility to drink responsibly. And at the same time, I think there are some things that we've done and ways that we've changed some of those interactions, and offering non-alcoholic options, or even not having alcohol at things that we would normally have alcohol at. And so I think it's a culture shift for our community, and there's straight up people that have stopped coming because they were hopeful to have alcohol and it wasn't there. And obviously for us, that's and I say that in a way that's like, do I know that for a fact? It's an attitude around it. So they're disappointed when alcohol is not present. And I think that continues to provide us with the perspective of like, it's a thing that needs some attention.
Well, the majority of people are not like us.
No.
Like, thankfully, the majority of people in society aren't stricken. I'm not saying like, oh, I have a hard time saying it's a
disease.
Say the D word, disease. Because logically I understand, but I still have a hard time saying that is a disease that I carry. For me, it's something that is a part of me.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it or define it as, it is something that I struggle with and always will.
Yeah.
And it takes effort. But the point is, I guess for me, is like we offer all different types of opportunities. Ones that we as a Mission 43, the Field House, like some events have alcohol, some don't. If people are at a place where they don't feel comfortable being around alcohol, don't go to that one. Go to a different one. If there are people like me and you that are comfortable being around it, but are not going to consume it, hey, we got non-alcoholic options for you. Like, we're not trying to exclude anyone. It's the opposite. And oftentimes, whether good or bad, some people that really need help, like I was, gravitate towards events that do have alcohol.
Yeah.
And like the very first time I was introduced to Mission 43, that's where they found me.
Yeah. Yeah, and
that's what got me into the pipeline of getting help to begin with.
Yeah, arguably it's culturally acceptable, and so that's where I would go. I would go to people that like to drink, and I would be in the audience. They didn't have drinking problems necessarily, but when I had more than 2 or 3 drinks in an hour, they didn't care. They didn't probably even notice, and so. Yeah, it is a unique thing. And I just feel the need to mention too, like the way that I'm trying to teach my kids about really anything, like a tool in general, the strongest and the most powerful tools can sometimes do the most damage. But when used effectively and appropriately, they do the most good. And I think that's, without naming objects or tools that are out there, I think those are things that we understand, and alcohol is a tool that you and I misused. So not to paint a positive light on alcohol use, but some of the most creative minds out there, like they get to those places because they can have a glass of wine and write some incredible works. A lot of things that are beautiful and we enjoy. Those are.
Probably should have said all of our opinions are our own, and we're not representing any organization opinions or anything like that, because there are a lot of opinions on this.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, what we can say is fact. What I can say is fact is, I am an alcoholic, and I really wish I wasn't. But it's something that, is something that developed over a long period of time. And it's interesting because still to this very day, at this very moment, I have a large part of me that believes that I struggle with other things and alcohol was the symptom. And like you said, in your case, the reality was different than that.
Yeah.
Can you talk about a little bit like what your experience going through Warrior's Heart and coming home? You've been sober for over a year now at the time we're sitting here talking now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. My experience with Warrior's Heart, it was hard. And it wasn't hard because the program is grueling. It was hard because I had to throw away all of my skills to get through uncomfortable situations, to kind of game the system, if you will. I mean, it's a place that you can go and you can do your 42-day time, and you can come back 42 days sober and not have the psychological change or attitude towards behavior. Mm-hmm. But that's why it was so hard for me, because I had to do the program, and it was with people that I naturally wouldn't gravitate towards, people that I'd rather not spend time with. And that's just, I mean, you take people all across the country and put them in the same room, like, it's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. Personalities clash. And, but to not hear what they were saying with the intent to help them understand their own problem, their own addiction, but to hear what they were saying and then to understand what it meant for me. I think that's the benefit of programs that have a lot of people in it. You hear a little piece of your story or your interaction with something as you're hearing from other people. And so to remove all judgment, to remove all, I guess, even curiosity into other people's lives with hopes to...
You say it like it's a really easy thing. Just remove all judgment.
Well, that's what I mean. That's the hard part. I had to consciously understand and realize that I could have zero attention on Brad Blair the entire time I was there, and I could help other people understand their problem. Mm-hmm. And I could point them in a direction that potentially would help them in their own addiction. But that did absolutely nothing for me. And so when, group conversations or group topics came up, like I had to share. I had to be me and be okay with people shooting arrows or, calling me out on things that maybe were vague, with hopes to give just enough information to pass the hat or whatever, whatever you're using to have. And so I think that's why it was hard. It was hard because even though I went with the intent that when I got home, my marriage would be whole, there are a lot of times that I would call home and I would not feel secure in my relationship with Abigail. And those were times where I had to exercise what I was learning at Warrior's Heart. Mm-hmm. Things like, be kind to yourself. Like, what does that even mean? Like, Brad, you look nice today. Like,
Selena Gomez has a song about it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I don't think we can talk about that.
I know like 3 lyrics to every song, but not any full song in its entirety. But in all that, like, practicing gratitude. Like, arguably somebody who I felt was attacking me, Abigail, understand that if I looked at her from a place of appreciation and hopefulness, that I could still love her in that moment, versus positioning myself out of frustration, girding up putting on my armor so that I can't be hurt, all those things that I previously have done throughout my life, to improve, to acknowledge the root of my addiction. And those are things that I still struggle with. I mean, how many times did I ask you if I was wearing the right thing for this podcast?
An abnormal amount.
Yeah, those are the little things that I think those my brain, even though it's like half a brain, like, it's going a million miles a minute, and it's all self-judgment. Most of the time it's Brad judging myself. Mm-hmm. And so, in that reality, like, just start voicing some of those things and removing the non-truths of what they are.
Yeah.
And so that takes practice. That takes me believing you when you say, Brad, you look nice today. And then, like, I don't know what the posture is. Like, thank you, Dan. But I don't know what that looks like, other than just practicing.
Would be nice, but yeah.
Yeah. Just practicing it. So practicing some of those things where everybody has their own internal frustration battles. And it's not as simple as going 180 degrees and doing the opposite.
No. And that is actually a good point, because, like, after this Warrior's Heart experience, well, throughout the years, we've seen people go down there numerous times.
Yeah.
We've helped people get down there definitely more than once.
Yeah.
That's never in the part of the plan. That's not part of the plan when you go down there and when you're in this intensive program for at least 42 days.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
You know, you don't come home thinking like, well, if I screw up, I'll just go right back to Warrior's Heart. Or at least I don't. I can speak for myself. It's not something I'm down to do. But at the same time, like, you have maintained your sobriety completely. And, you know, for me, practicing radical honesty is really important. So, like, I have not, you know, like, I came home October 13th, November 11th, I drank again. Total unplanned fuck it moment for me that I just did. And then, you know, luckily through help with other people, you included, you know, I got right back into working the program that I needed to work, and I've been sober since then. But it's a process, man, and it's not linear. And I think that people should probably know some things. It's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
Like, going down there, like, I'm 8.5 months away from accruing leave right now for my job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long time to take. Like, you were in the same spot, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, whether or not you think it's the right time, because did you feel it was the right time for you to go to Warrior's Heart?
No.
Fuck no. Neither did I. We were about to do the 9/11 Miles of Remembrance Run, the biggest one ever.
Yeah.
I had planned all this stuff, and that's just me. My family, I can't leave this. I can't leave my job. It's so cliche, man, but there's no good time, like, ever. So what would you say if someone's thinking like, God, you know what? I need this. My spouse needs this. My friend needs this.
Yeah, well, I'll just share the words that I had to tell myself, and the words that I tell people even now when they're questioning whether or not they should go. It's like, you cannot continue in your current state. Like, and that's not me just telling them that. That's taking in information from them to know that that's their own belief, right? And so usually it's like, I can't leave my kids. I can't leave my wife with all these responsibilities. I can't leave my job, all my employees or employer, my peers, they depend on me. Like, none of that even matters though, if you're not there. And I think that's the brutal, honest reality is, like, it takes one action, one accident, to ruin your life for the rest of your life, and to remove your ability to even participate in those things. And so, thank God that we have the opportunity to even interact with the choice of going to a program like that. Not everybody does.
No.
Some people are mandated. Some people, they meet those ultimatums that it's like, if I don't do this, like, there's no reason to live. And so everybody's on, I think, a different scale of that choice. But in reality, like, logistically wise, like, things are going to get figured out. They just do. And it's, I don't know, it's hard to hear, right? Like, Mission 43 went on, ORP went on while I was at Warrior's Heart. We hosted the 9/11 event, and we had almost 2,000 people there at Ann Morrison Park. So there's things that are just going to happen. Like, the sun's going to come up. Like, that's not my job. And so, yeah, it's that acceptance that I am not as big and I'm not as capable as I like to think I am.
One of the things, Brad, that you mentioned, it's the what if scenarios. And I think for people like me, and I believe you from knowing you, is that was something we both leaned on as an excuse not to get help. Because it's like, you can play the what if game all day. What if I get in trouble? What if I die because of my habit, whether it's alcohol or otherwise? What if I, lose my marriage or my relationship with X, Y, and Z? Like, all those things are what ifs. And I pointed to those as, what if that's not me, though? Like, that hasn't happened. And I think maybe for those listening, if you think you're in a position where you might be struggling, instead of looking at it as a what if, probably more realistically, it's a not yet. Like, it's not a what if. Like, if I continue down the same path that I was on, my liver was going to shut down, hands down. If I didn't get in trouble or, Jesus Christ, think about hurting somebody accidentally. Like, it's just the antithesis of everything that I want to be as a person. And I fooled myself into thinking that that was just a small part of my life, when in reality it was driving my life.
Yeah. No, I think we could probably throw out a bunch of phrases, but at least it's not is another one. That's the one that I had in my tool belt. Like, I could be doing this.
At least you weren't Dan.
At least I'm not Dan. Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah. There are so many of those things that I think we utilize, that I utilized as ammunition to not make the right choice and seek the help that I needed. And yeah, it can't be said enough. I think it was the perfect time for me to go. And there are a lot of things, even the day leading up to like me leaving, there's some crazy things. So my wife, Abigail, was pregnant. We thought she had a miscarriage the day that I was supposed to be going to Warrior's Heart. And I didn't find out until I landed in San Antonio whether or not it was, if she still had a viable pregnancy. And that was scary, man. But to accept that reality, like, Brad, there's nothing you can do. There is absolutely nothing you can do except the next right thing. And the next right thing for me in that moment was going to Warrior's Heart. And, Gracie's 5 months old. So, that reality of, another life to preserve and protect the best that I can.
Well, I can't really express how much I appreciate your willingness to share as honestly as you're sharing. And I think that it's been on my mind for quite some time because, a part of everyone's lives, but certainly our jobs, is we try to portray ourselves as something positive, right? And I mean, I know it's what you seek to be, and honestly, it's what you are. You're a positive influence on those that you meet, touch, and whose lives you get involved with. And in that, I think that there's an assumption that your life is all positive all the time. And I just appreciate you being willing to share kind of some behind the scenes stuff. And in particular, again, I really hope that if people are interested at all in learning more about any of our partner programs, whether it's Summit Hyperbarics, Marcus Institute for Brain Health, Headstrong, which, by the way, you don't have to go anywhere. Like, you just have counseling appointments right in your own home or wherever you want with some of the best clinicians in the country. Warrior's Heart, obviously, and Marcus.
Yeah.
So I think, you're available. You're available to answer those questions. You're available to provide some non-clinical guidance and get them connected to some clinicians that can make some clinical guidance and suggestions on what they do next.
Yeah. No, and on that note, like, first thing people say is, "Oh, I'm sorry you're having to deal with this," or it's probably not your job. Like, no, that is my job. My job is to answer the phone and to connect people with the appropriate clinicians or programs. And I don't have all the answers, but thank goodness there's people that are more educated on the matters than I am. But on that note, we have incredible people on our team. Sue Hicks, as a licensed clinical social worker, she's here in town. She'll be located there at Summit Hyperbarics Health and Wellness for specific behavioral health programming. The Headstrong project. It's pretty incredible how they've been able to mobilize clinicians, and I think it's no mystery that behavioral health is kind of a hot topic item, ticket item, however we say that.
Mm-hmm.
But in its reality, like, finding clinicians is hard. Finding good clinicians that help is hard, and I think it's been really cool to see how the Headstrong project is identifying those people or training them to get the right credential or the licensure here in Idaho. All those things that they'll help do, and we need teachers and we need clinicians in Idaho. So,
well, we need a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But In the meantime, we'll put some links to your contact information below here. But like, if there is someone out there, Mission 43 members or anyone that's eligible, if you served in the military, and if you're a first responder, like if you're a cop listening to this in your patrol car, or if you're a firefighter listening to this on your iPods in your fancy bed in your bunkhouse. Just kidding, firefighters. Like, don't be afraid to hit up Brad at any point, because he is your first initial contact into accessing these programs in a really meaningful way. Don't be afraid to come out to Mission 43 events and sniff butts and figure us out. And we're happy to be honest with you and where we're at. And, you know, if you're struggling, please reach out.
Yeah.
Whether it's to Brad or to me or to anyone on the Mission 43 team, we want to help. Because both of us sitting here right now, like, we have a lot to pay forward in people helping us. And, well, for me, I mean, I'm not Brad, I'm not perfect. You know, I'm not going to talk at you, and I know you won't either, from a place of do this and be like me because I'm better. But I can definitely share the experiences and the struggles.
Yeah. Well, I'm just appreciative to have this opportunity to share with people that might be listening or watching, and even humble ourselves through this process of integrity and help people understand that, yeah, there's still things out there that that we're learning. I mean, it's a continual process. So as you identify or you understand areas that you might need help, that's where it's a great opportunity to reach out. And if I'm not the guy, you know, it's better that you reach out to somebody and get connected to a program or the right initiative. But we would love to be that program for those individuals. And whether it's reaching out to you, Dan, I know people find you more inviting than me at times, maybe comforting, maybe just snuggling on the couch.
People drawn to me like because I'm built like a lava lamp.
You're warmer in the winter.
That's
I don't
true.
know.
That's actually accurate.
But all those things and a huge, you know, we want to invite the first responder community. That's probably been the hardest thing, or the way to help them understand, like, this is not just a military and veteran program. It's open to the first responder community, as, you know, police, fire, paramedics. They are our hometown heroes, right? Like, they didn't maybe there's a lot of crossover veteran law enforcement and police, fire, you know. But the reality is not. Some people took the pledge to stay here and protect our neighborhoods. And I mean, you're in law enforcement. I was a volunteer firefighter, so I enjoyed those comfy beds.
Yep.
But all that being
Thank you for your
said,
service.
the reality is we just want to help. You know, we want to connect people to a service that's not readily available in the way that it's being provided through hyperbarics, and hopefully makes an impact like you and I that changes our lives.
Yeah. Well, for everyone that served in any of those capacities, whether it's military, first responder, or otherwise, like, we were all dutifully suffered in silence for a long period of time. We all volunteered to do so, but I just encourage you one last time not to suffer in silence anymore. Yeah. If you're dealing with TBI, PTSD, substance use disorder, any combination thereof, please reach out. And thanks for joining us, Brad, and thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me on again. 3.0 coming.
Yep. Hopefully not. Thanks for joining us for the Mission 43 podcast. We hope you found it informative and helpful. If you have any questions or feedback, please comment below or email podcast@mission43.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast to stay up to date with new episodes. Be proud of your service, not defined by it. See you next time.